Hi everyone, I'm Jodie from psychosynthesis.online and Opening the Door on Private Practice Facebook group for counsellors and psychotherapists. Okay, so my previous video was a step-by-step how to set counselling fees video, and on this one I'll be talking about how to raise fees. So with only a few months to the financial year, I posted in Opening the Door on Private Practice about who was raising their fees, and it generated quite a discussion in there, and I thought I'd reply with the video. So there's a few reasons to raise your fees, and the first one is because you can't afford not to. So one of my colleagues, Minky van der Walt, who is a music therapist and clinical supervisor, and I'm going to link to her website below because she has quite a few services for therapists. So she has therapy for therapists, clinical supervision for therapists, and courses for therapists. So, and she's amazing. I did her little introductory evening, I think it was, with some music therapy and stuff in it, and it was just incredible. So yeah, check the link out in the comments and go and visit her website. Anyway, her accountant said that the cost of living has raised by 7%, and for a lot of people, therapists included, the cost of living at the moment has gone through the roof. So raise your fees because you can't afford not to. Number two, because you've reached the GST threshold and you'll be passing this cost on to clients. So for those who live outside Australia, I think, I can't remember what it is exactly, 75,000 maybe. Once you earn over $75,000, you'll need to start paying GST, which is a tax. And psychologists actually don't have to pay that, or charge their clients GST, because they're psychologists and it's all part of the system that we work in here. So we're hoping that PACFA will advocate, they are advocating for that, I think, so that as we gain more and more recognition, we hopefully won't have to pay that at some point. I don't know when that's going to be, but fingers crossed that that happens for us. Okay, because self-care matters. That's number three. How can we take care of our clients if we're not taking care of ourselves? I think therapists are no different to clients, and that we have probably all had money issues at some point in our lives in relation to our worth. So I think it's all sort of tied into each other: self-care, money, worth, all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of personal work to do there, I think, around this one. Certainly has been for me. Actually, I remember when I put my fees up, I'd been to a course at ACAP, CBT. I don't know why I was there doing a CBT course, but anyway, oh yes, a job had asked me that I needed to have that before I applied. I came home to my husband, I said, oh my God, I need to raise my fees. There I was on my little $100, and all these male psychologists who were like 25 and I was like 40 were charging like $280, $350. And I'm like, okay, I really need to put my fees up. So that was around my worst. So kind of going off piste a little bit here, but you know what I mean. Okay, so yeah, back to self-care. In the pandemic, I took a 6-month sabbatical, as most of you know. And when I came back, I decided my daughter started high school around the same time. Didn't realize how much high schoolers need in terms of their emotional needs and homework needs and all that kind of stuff. So I decided that I wouldn't go back to a full 18-a-week practice, which was a part-time 18 a week. So I reduced my client hours and I put my fees up. So that was that. Okay, number four, just because you want to. And I know this is going to ruffle some feathers because I do see a lot of sort of holier than thou comments from usually a certain group of therapists. I won't mention who, and typically in another country it tends to be worse. There's a lot of judgment around therapists making money. So put your fees up just because you want to, and you don't need to feel guilty for that. Apart from everything else, I think this is one of the most expensive professions there is. I don't know anyone else that has to spend money like we do on things like, firstly, our own therapy. You know, I think I've been a therapist for 22 years. This is probably my third long-term stint in therapy. So I've been in therapy since, I think it was July, August, September 2020, pandemic. Weekly long-term psychotherapy again. And I think it's impossible to be a therapist long-term without doing our own work, which is expensive, you know. So yeah, otherwise, and also the cost of training, you know, CPD training, you know, there's free trainings, but yeah, I look at them and I think, oh, it's a bit meh. So at least every couple of years, you know, most of us invest quite a big amount in a big training, like a Gottman training, or we were talking in my group this morning about circle of security training. You know, these trainings aren't cheap, so make sure you're factoring all that in. That's in the last one anyway, about how to charge, but what to charge, what fee to charge. But anyway, so don't feel guilty for putting your fees up when you need to or want to. So now we're going to look at how to do that. So most therapists are fearful that clients won't react well to a fee increase. Like I said, I've been in practice for 22 years. I don't really remember a time where clients were funny about it, you know. You know, and I'm very careful about the way that I raise fees. So maybe that has something to do with it. I don't just whack on an extra $10 every year because I can. I think quite sort of holistically around how I'm going to do that, which was in my last video. Okay, so so the step one. The first thing to do for raising fees in my practice is that I make sure that I write it in my contract. So you put in there how often you will review your fees. And my contract, which is available to purchase on Etsy, I state that I review my fees annually each financial year. So this is the client who, yeah, so that we're sitting in our first session, we're having our contract talk, and I let them know there in the contract as I go through it with them. I also email that to them after the session, so they've got an online copy, a soft copy. And that way the client knows and is not caught off guard if I raise my fees on the 1st of July. So always have that in the contract. Each July, I review my fees and I may raise my fees. Now, I don't do that every July. I haven't done it for a couple of years. I've only raised for new clients. So maybe I raised once when I came back from a sabbatical, but that's all. You raise them as often as you like though. That's up to you. What do I want to say about that? Yes, so they're not caught off guard. So that's in the contract. If you would like to or need to raise your fees, go back to the last episode to help you decide how much. So maybe you're feeling like you're always just scraping by. Go back and figure out how to work that out for the 40 sessions a year, how many hours you want to work, and then, you know, what your income needs to be. Okay, so you've made the decision to raise your fees. Now you need to let your clients know. So I personally give 3 months notice, but preferably 6 months. Now, I work always long-term with people, so I have very few clients that are under 3 months, 6 months. They would only be there because they're starting their long-term therapy with me. I've got a couple at the moment because I've just taken a few new clients, but that's because they're new. They will most likely all be medium to long-term clients. So I like to give a medium to long-term amount of time in order for someone to get used to that. If you see clients like with a high turnover, you know, maybe you could give a shorter amount of notice, but I still think three months is a good amount of time. Okay, so my personal timings for fee raising goes like this. January the 1st, I raise my fees for any new clients coming that year. Now they'll typically start in February or mid-January to February. I have been waiting till my kids go back to school on about the 2nd of February before I start seeing new clients most years, the last couple of years. So that's when I raise for new clients. What am I saying here? What have I got here? Always that, yes. If I'm going to raise my fees the following year, because I like to give 3 to 6 months notice, before Christmas, I will probably say to clients, just to let you know, I'll be raising my fees for new clients in January. Existing clients, which is you, I will be raising in July, and it will be going to this much. So I'm usually thinking way in advance around stuff like that. But you know, you never know, stuff happens, like, you know, the way interest rates have gone up, you may not have that amount of time to let people know, and that's okay too. It's just the way I like to do it. Okay, so, you know, and then I will follow it up with an email. So the following year in January, before the client comes back, I send an email just to let you know that I've raised my fees for new clients starting in January, and then your fee will remain the same until July the 1st, and then your fees will be this amount, whatever it is that I've raised it to. Please let me know if this will impact you attending our therapy sessions. You are more than welcome to bring this to our next session tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday. So I like to send that out just before clients come back. I've already told them anyway, they know that, but it's just a follow up. So I always like to talk in person in the room. The reason I like to give 6 months also is because it gives the client time to complete if they need to. Now, I know who's struggling and who's not, so I probably wouldn't raise someone's fee unless it was absolutely necessary on my end. If this is someone who's financially struggling, I wouldn't do that, especially if they're mid to long-term trauma therapy and I'm in the middle of processing trauma, inner child work, doing all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's not something I'd probably do for those people. But you know, if it got to a point where that was impacting me financially, of course I would. Okay, so this is an interesting one, because in my research for this video I came across quite a few therapists, or maybe coaches, who were suggesting, maybe supervisors, suggesting giving a reason for the fee increase and framing it in a way that the client will empathize with you. I am not a fan of this at all. It's not our client's job to empathize with our finances, and I just feel like there are so many concerns around money and worth. I feel like this is a tactic by the therapist, and actually so that they can sort of raise their fees without actually having to do the uncomfortable work for themselves. I think it infantilizes the client, and it also helps the therapist avoid the client's disappointment, anger, and so forth. So it's kind of, I'll lessen this and I'll make it all fluffy and I'll make it all nice so that you don't get angry or upset with me. I don't like that, and I personally do not recommend doing that. You could say, if you wanted to, very briefly, due to inflation, I will be raising my fees, and stop there. You don't need to make it all because of this and because of that and da da da, and I want you to feel sorry for me. That is not good. That's not good for clients. So please don't do that. Okay, and also, yeah, it takes the opportunity away to work on a whole heap of issues that may be, you know, hanging around since early childhood. You know, I don't know about you, but over the years, clients, you know, who have been from all sorts of different socioeconomic backgrounds and all sorts of things with money, basically. So I think that's a perfect opportunity to begin to work with that. Okay, so clinically, whenever there is a policy change, check in with the clients to see how they're doing with it, and whatever, you know, that is in their session. I'm also looking for changes in behaviour of the client after a policy change. So they start turning up late, or maybe they start turning up early. I want my extra money's worth. They start cancelling more frequently. You know, just keep your eye out for what might be going on if you've had a policy change. and be curious about that in the session. So it's not about shaming people for turning up late, but I'm curious, what's that about? I notice it's only started happening in the last 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah, working on that. Okay, and in terms of clients, now might be a really good time to check in with them anyway around how they're doing financially, and because, you know, things, I noticed yesterday, where did we go? Oh yeah, I went to Harris Farm, I went to Coles, I went to Harris Farm, and I went to Woolies over the week. Every time I thought, oh my God, that's unbelievable, $500 like in Harris Farm, which isn't unusual, but it was like, I counted like 5 items and they were $10 each, and I thought, God, things have got really expensive. So, you know, I think everyone's doing it tough at the moment. So it's a good time to check in with them, how they're doing, and wonder with them about, you know, how they're doing financially. In my research for this, something came up that I really liked the idea of. I hadn't thought of myself, but talking about a cost of living raise. So getting people to ask their employer, rather than waiting for the yearly raise or whatever it is. I mean, I know at my husband's work, there was a few years there where they didn't do anything every year. So going and asking for a cost of living raise, and it's sometimes called a cost of living adjustment, a COLA. So it's an increase in salary meant to help employees cover existing living expenses. So maybe some of their work is around doing something like that. Yeah, because the cost of living has increased faster than wages for the past decade, and there's no slowing down anytime soon. So one of the things that stops therapists from raising their fees is about our money mindset and the stories we tell ourselves, you know, things like the Medicare system. I can't raise my fees because then it will be more than the gap fee, or, you know, something like that. So I talked about that in my last video, so go back and listen to the reality of Medicare and that gap. I think you'll be surprised if you haven't listened already. Very few people are getting bulk billed for Medicare, getting their psychology sessions for free these days. You know, I certainly know our own family psychologist is over $300. So, you know, really look at your mindset around that Medicare issue here in Australia. You know, also about our history around worth, our money stories from our early childhood, and this always sort of shows up, I think, in terms of setting boundaries and fee setting with clients. So these are issues to take to personal therapy and clinical supervision. Okay, I hope this was useful. Come on over and join this conversation at Opening the Door on Private Practice. And I will put my contract in the comments. You can purchase it on Etsy, where look, it's only a very brief sentence in there, but it sets everything out in terms of how I do all that with my clients. Okay, thanks for listening. Bye.